streaming on YouTube. Oh, hold on, I can't hear anything. Probably just my.
Yeah, I can hear you.
My end. Oh no! Oh no! Hold on a sec. Oh, what a pain! Just a sec, people. Just a sec, people. Coming up in 8 minutes. Yeah, 8 minutes. Do us a favour, share the show. If you're watching an archive version, you might want to fast forward about 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Hey, Boosey.
Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah,
Good
well,
afternoon.
I'm still in California and have to stay in California now.
That's Boosey.
They removed your ability to move around.
No, yeah, I've been quarantined
Oh dear.
Oh, mate.
That was
because
silly.
I was exhibiting some symptoms of corona.
Right, okay.
Minor symptoms, so. But
Yeah.
it's, you've got a dry cough and a sore throat. You're on 14-day quarantine. You're not even going to work as an essential worker.
Blimey.
Yeah, they're just trying to lock you up, mate. They know the deal. They're trying to safeguard the good Californian public from a provocateur. Yeah, they know the score. Hey, Piers. Hey, Boosey.
Hi.
God bless you. Piers, show us your Mona Lisa.
What?
Show us your Mona Lisa. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome to the weird world of coronavirus. Coming up in 5 minutes, people. Damn, better get me coffee. Oh, hold on. I need to do that and that. There we go. All right. 5 minutes, people. And for goodness sake, share the show, yeah? Let's see if we can get more than about 3 people watching today, for goodness sake. I'll tell you, absolute joke. It's only Piers' mum that watches. know what's going on with the chat today. Unable to connect to the chat on YouTube. I'm going to have to try and do something about that. Well, would you believe it? Spot on the top of the hour to the second. Hey, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in this mad world of corona and whatnot. Welcome to the Daily Chaos. I'm Olly Connelly. Thanks for turning up. And now, imagine a world where the politics was as clean as the shopping trolleys. We got old Piers in the house, Piers Garnham. Boosey, Chris Boosey from stateside, California, in quarantine. And we've got Jay Carey as well. Jay Carey, God bless you, the downliner on YouTube. Jay, how are you, sir? I might have just blown your cover. Do apologise for that.
It's okay. It's okay, Ollie. Don't worry about it.
I want to say a big thank you to you, actually, before going into the show today, for procuring Mark Williams as a guest on Friday. Really looking forward to having a chat with Mark. Mark is well known around the blogosphere for talking about what's going on in this weird world of ours. And I'm looking forward to trying to extract some of that information from his enormous brain, his encyclopedic, conspiratorial brain on Friday. So looking forward to that. Big cheers for sorting that out, Jay. And I don't know what happened to the Viscount. Piers, where's the Viscount today? Is he all right?
Well, I think he's still feeling pretty rough. I mean, he ate something. I think he ate a piece of soap, thinking it was a piece of cake that his daughter had made. So he's made himself doubly ill. You know, I mean, I think he's got a cold or flu-like virus, which could or could not be COVID-19. So he's suffering from that, but he did himself a double injury, by eating.
He didn't really. I did see that. He put a message having inadvertently eaten half a bar of biological soap in the mistaken belief it was a cake baked by the child. I've now got food poisoning. Can't bloody make it up. I'll definitely try for tomorrow. Thanks, chaps. Defo play the Dambusters, he says. Nation needs some good rousing marches. So yeah, no, it looks like the Viscount is not here after all. And I don't know whether he's got corona or what, but I don't know who has. Because maybe you can tell us, Boosey, are you a suspect now? And if these testing kits aren't working, all of these figures behind me count for absolutely nothing apart from questions.
Yeah, exactly. Because I have minor symptoms, unless you are basically, well, as far as my healthcare provider is saying, unless you're admitted with serious, like life-threatening symptoms, you ain't going to get tested because they haven't got enough tests. So,
and the ones they have got were made in China. They went down the corner shop and bought them from the China shop. I mean, come off it.
Well, no, the ones in Europe a lot of the time are coming from China.
Right.
So, America's not buying them from China.
Right.
It's made that perfectly clear.
How many tests are they doing?
I've just heard that the coronavirus testing kits bound from China to the UK are infected with COVID-19.
I'm sorry. Repeat that. Sorry, I didn't take that in.
The testing kits apparently are going to have to be sent back because they're infected with COVID-19.
Right. Well, that's like vaccines, isn't it? Isn't that what they do? They
basically you're
shoving a load of mercury and say, "Take
if you didn't have it before, yeah." So no, they won't test me because I have a dry cough and sore throat and a bit of muscular achiness, but they're
so you
just
went
saying,
down the gym.
well, you haven't got a fever, you haven't got any of the more serious symptoms, so we're not going to test you. But what that does mean, as far as I'm reading it, is that if you're going to only test those people that, if we say the tests are valid, if you're only going to test the people that have the serious symptoms, you're going to end up with a higher mortality rate for those who've been tested, who have a positive test for the virus. Because if they're serious enough to be going into hospital, then they're at more risk of dying. So, whereas if you test everyone with even minor symptoms, it's going to mean you've got a wider spread, and obviously the people who've got minor symptoms are less likely to die, so therefore the mortality rate will be lower. So it really means that we can't trust the figures for who has the disease. We can't trust the figures as to how threatening to people's health this disease actually is, because we've got skewed figures. Basically, if we were to look at this on a statistical basis, the data sets are so flawed as to make any statistical outcomes statistically worthless.
Yeah, it is a bit of a worry. I'm kind of in a perverse frame of mind here, because on the one hand, this is serious. I mean, we've all got loved ones who are threatened, and some of us know people whose loved ones have died. And in my case, 2 people are in that category so far. But on the other hand, frankly, we don't know quite what they've died of. I mean, they're not even being honest. Piers, maybe you'd give me a bit of your feedback on this. they're not even being honest about where this thing came from. How are we supposed to trust them about anything else?
Quite right. Well, everything Chris has said is absolutely spot on. I mean, the statistics are so skewed. And as he suggested, if you're only going to test the people that are severely compromised by it, then the death rate is going to be higher, which seems to be an incentive to try and scare the shit out of everybody. It is very skewed. We don't know where it really came from or how it originated. It seems, I mean, I've reached the point with this whole thing where I honestly just don't know what to believe anymore. I mean, I don't know whether, 5G is exacerbating the problem. Somebody sent me some footage apparently of people chopping down 5G masts in Wuhan earlier on. I have no idea if the footage is genuine. You see, I mean, people can use footage from other things, and just, purpose it for whatever they're choosing to say it is. And we can't have confirmation.
And they have been doing that. We know that they've done that. There's been a few instances where footage has been used. For example, there was a hospital that was supposed to be in New York. It turned out it was a hospital in Italy. There was a really concerning picture, a hall full of coffins. And it turns out that picture was from 2016.
It was actually from a Hollywood film.
It was from a Hollywood movie. That's right. That's right.
But yeah, we are being led a merry dance here by the mainstream and some of the stuff that's not official. There's also this report given by this chap who was apparently high up in Vodafone, saying that the virus is just being used as a complete smokescreen, and that 5G, they want to create the New World Order want to create a smart world, where everything is interconnected, and the only way they can do that is with the power of 5G. And they knew that it would have a knock-on effect with health, that it sort of poisons the cells in people's bodies, and that a lot of these people going crazy and dropping dead in the streets as a result of directly as a result of the 5G. But again, I don't know whether that testimony can be trusted either. You just see these videos come up. The people sound very eloquent and articulate and seem to know their stuff, but you have no idea whether or not they're just rantings of a deranged lunatic or someone who actually knows what they're talking about. So we're living, we definitely are living in a time where we just don't know what to believe anymore. It's sort of like, I mean, I do think that the virus was, something that was, contrived in a lab. That does seem to be the overriding evidence that this thing was designed, but for what purpose and how potent it was supposed to be remains questionable.
Piers,
I don't know.
I'm sorry, but if you do not believe the official narrative from the totalitarian Chinese state, then you are a conspiracy theorist. I read it in the Daily Mail.
that veritable rag of truth.
Well, I'm at the point now. I'm actually almost throwing my teddies out the pram at home when they when people put CNN or any of those on. I'm like, why are we putting a Chinese propaganda station on the TV?
They are now.
Is absolutely no. Yeah. There is
the China News Network.
There is no factual basis. There's no facts being put out by these things, or very few. And it's like, I'm actually saying to family, look, I believe in the First Amendment, but where do we go? There's got to be a line from supporting the First Amendment and having these news agencies being able to not have any governmental interference as to whether they're allowed to broadcast or not. Mm-hmm. And there's got to be a thing where they're actually committing the act of treason, where they're giving aid and comfort to an enemy when they're spouting an enemy's propaganda. and calling it news, that's treason. That is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
Yeah.
So we've got to look at that and go, seriously, where does the line, where are we going to draw this line of this is First Amendment rights and this is actually a high crime where we need to be locking up the people who own the networks and putting them on trial.
We do. I agree with you.
Treason.
I totally agree with you. What they're doing is absolutely crazy. I went shopping earlier and people literally are looking at each other in fear. Everyone's wearing a face mask or whatever. I saw a friend of mine, Santi, a lovely bloke, really, really good bloke. And he looked like an Olympic skier. He was dressed up so much. And he looked at me and wanted to give me a hug and then kind of like distanced himself, like, oh, you might give me the virus sort of thing. I mean, it's really, really pitiful. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be taking precautions. We should. But it just does seem to me that the media is so guilty of spreading untoward fear, way, way more fear than is required or healthy. And, people need to maybe just have a giant dollop of philosophy and be asking who actually has killed more people, for example, coronavirus or COVID-19 or whatever it's called, or that bloke they keep wheeling out on the BBC to tell us how to think and live, Tony Blair. 2 million people dead because of him. But there's no health warning, is there? Oh, he's always in the papers. Sorry, it annoys me. Jay Carey, sir, how are you doing up in northern England? How are you doing?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on all this? Are you as confused as the rest of us? Do you think that, on balance, that, for example, the British government has basically played this pretty much the way they had to? Or do you think they've overstepped it, understepped it, or what?
I don't know. It looked like there was a bit of Boris was fighting back, and now he's completely caved in. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe he had his best intentions because you could see it in his eyes, and now it just seems like he's given up. I mean, like you saw how tired he was.
Given up to what?
Given up, trying to oppose the control over him, like the permanent government, for example.
What, you mean the global cabal, the Bilderberg thing, the people that really run the planet, the deep state, as the President of the United States calls it. And so if he's a conspiracy theorist, well, he was elected by a lot of people, Yeah,
or as we know it in the UK, the CFR, 10 Duke Street, not 10 Downing Street.
The CFR, the thingy, Council on Foreign Relations.
That's the one.
Another Bilderberg spout.
Have you seen the legislation they're putting through Parliament?
It's crazy. It's crazy, that legislation.
Seriously,
the coronavirus bill.
Yeah, I mean, it's they can take samples from you and give you meds and basically they can arrest people without warrant and they can detain people, indefinitely. I mean, it's a serious, hardcore, draconian legislation that is essentially, sort of martial laws, where you're basically taking away all the citizens' rights. And you've got you're basically sort of legislating for a time of extreme emergency where you're taking any civil liberties or rights away from people and putting all the power in the hands of the government. I mean, they are. If you have a little look at the list of stuff in it, it's really quite chilling.
Yeah,
Did you see the story about the woman who was fined 660 quid? Was it for being at a train station and then being asked what she was doing there and she didn't answer?
Yeah, it's what the hell's going on? I mean, it does seem that they are setting us up for some sort of conditioning. I mean, that they're trying to normalize all of this in some way, so that we're not. I don't know. I mean, there are lots of people that I follow online who are saying that the net's going to go down or slow to a crawl.
They wondered if it was going to happen today. It is actually April the 1st today. April Fools.
I don't think it's going to happen on April 1st.
They should call that day Government Day.
Yeah.
I mean,
let me
yeah,
but for you, I want you to come back on this, Piers. But before you do, let me just read a few points that are being brought up by people like Mark Windows, who's coming in on Friday. So I want to go through this with him. But he says that the agenda is to restrict travel, mandated vaccination, a cashless society, to destroy self-employment, ensuring state dependency, to roll in a universal basic income under a Chinese model of hyper-control. Piers.
well, it does everything that the legislation that's being brought in. Everything seems to be leaning towards that way. I mean, I personally do believe that that the guys at the top of the tree got together in the 50s and thought, they did their models and their projections to see where the global population was going to go under the current paradigm of their control. Oil-based systems, holding back a lot of technological advancement because they don't want us to be able to operate autonomously. They need to, we need to remain under their remit of control. And I do believe they thought, well,
and so they could keep selling oil as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have definitely thought that the population reduction seems to be the only way they can retain their control over us. They want to slim the population down, reduce the amount of environmental damage we're doing that way, without really changing anything at all, and maintain their grip on control. So I very much do believe that is the philosophy in play. So maybe what we're seeing around us right now is the onset of that. They've green lighted the whole project. The likes of Bill Gates and his cohorts. George Soros and who was the other chap? Warren Buffett. Apparently even what's the name that the chat show? Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah
Winfrey.
At the meeting that those three had when they were talking about using some sort of virus as a means to decrease population. But apparently,
what was she saying? What was her hand in it?
Well,
allegedly,
she's another very wealthy, influential person. Who they invited along to talk about, the potential possibility of ploughing money into viral research in order to reduce population. Apparently,
certainly likes hanging out with very dodgy characters like Weinstein and all that.
Walked out of the meeting and vomited because she was so disturbed by what she heard. So this is the rumor. But so it does seem that there is some sort of agenda afoot. It does seem that maybe COVID-19 was developed to be far more potent than it actually is, and that there have been some kind of intervention that has massively reduced its potency, and now there is a sort of we're waiting now for a lot of our communication ability to go down. I mean, in the UK, they're talking about power cuts, which is a very odd thing that the mainstream have started to bring up in the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all. And this is literally just after the likes of Wilcock and Fulford and Gerd are all talking about the possibility of us losing our internet connections and our phones only working for emergency services for a period of about 72 hours, while the Alliance, who are working against Deep State, do a sweep and do
the 3 days of darkness. That's what they call it, aren't they?
Yeah,
it's actually 10 days of darkness.
No, 10 days was when he stopped talking between 26th of December and the 5th of January.
Yeah, well, it depends on which...
Darkness being in military communication for, go dark, cease communication. And he didn't.
Yes, the 3 days of darkness. This seems to be basically us being denied all method of communication. Although they are going to use, the emergency services. I think in America, you already had banners and emergency things being broadcast on your phones, didn't you? I don't know if you actually experienced that yourself, or
no.
I have. I do get on here. I get emergency broadcasts, and you can't turn the only ones you can't turn off are the presidential ones, and that when the darkness is supposed to be on, from what I'm hearing, we're going to get. Basically, what we will get broadcasts from the president. He will probably be ensconced on Air Force One. for obvious reasons, and they will do them. And from what I'm hearing, we will be getting all the TV networks will be going down, and it'll be a single whatever channel you go on to, you'll be having the same feed,
Back to the
and
70s.
it will be showing you confessions. It'll be showing you information about what's been going on, documentaries, etc., trials.
So don't take offence here, Boosey and Piers, but I don't really trust Fulford. I followed him during the 2016 Trump election.
Ben Fulford.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Benjamin Fulford. And why did he charge for the information? That doesn't make sense.
Why do you not trust him, out of interest, Jay? Why do you not trust him?
Because I followed him in 2016 during the Trump election, and there's a lot of stuff that he said, like Obama would call martial law in order to stop Trump getting elected, and there's so much stuff, and none of it happened.
Yeah. He might be a bit fantastical.
He sounds like a fictional writer who's trying to make money off something.
I do.
I'm
Piers,
not referring
what's
to
your take?
Fulford myself.
You're
I'm
more
using
of
other
a.
sources.
Sorry, go on, Boosey.
I'm not. To be honest, I don't really know too much about who Fulford is, so I'm not actually using information from him. I'm using obviously the Q information, but also
He's a former financial
contact.
journalist who started writing all this conspiratorial stuff about 8 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And then started charging for it, and for the first week you have to pay for it, and then it's free after that. So
if you want some incredible stories,
obviously, where Jay was saying that there's none of my information is coming from him. Let's put it. I'll just put it there.
That's
good. If I don't know him, my information's not coming from him.
Look, I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to ask you guys about Q in a sec. But first of all, let's take a few comments. And people, please share the show. There's about 40 old people watching at the moment. I don't know. It's good fun.
I did share the show, but the show started at 9 a.m. Pacific. So,
what else are they doing? They're all in quarantine for crying out. Right. Let me just get
wait, hold on, Ollie. I'm planning to share it on the Q boards when next time.
Yeah, get it on the Q boards. Phantom Prophet says now Boris Johnson is coming out of isolation after just 7 days, meaning he's still able to infect others. It just doesn't make sense. And apparently old Charlie Boy just had a 7-day installation as well. I don't know if that's an elitist thing or what, no idea. Indoctrination of fear on a misrepresentation of the nation, says Mark Conway. Phantom Prophet also says when those in power are not following their own advice, how can they expect people to take them seriously? And they
who do as I say.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? They cannot go back on the Magna Carta rights, says Amanda Rolfson. Well, I wish that were the case. Sam JP, the more people are locked down in their homes, the more skeptical they will become about this lot. The asleep will start to do their own research and might just wake up to MSM double speak.
That's the hope. That's the hope, but they probably won't do that. They'll probably just watch BBC all day.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because if you look any rag that you go to now, they have got the top 10 podcasts that you should be following or whatever, which is, I don't know, the Clinton Gazette or whatever. I mean, it's clear that the mainstream media is trying to divert people as usual herd them into a lot of old cock. But I'm sure they're concerned that people will actually check out some more lateral thinking channels. Mark Conway also says one thing they all done, each country given the banks billions, in some cases trillions. This is a cover to bail out the banks again. None of the money will seep through on a level that affects lives. That, I understand, is true. Phantom Prophet says, I was so tempted to go shopping dressed as a zombie for April Fool's Day. but thought I might actually get shot by some moronic plod. An 8 full pint says Blair and the media press took 6 weeks to fool everybody with WMD, weapons of mass destruction propaganda. Millions dead, and they got away with it. Dirty BBC. Damn right, 8 full pint.
Have you seen that
Good to
film
see
Official
you, Nate,
Secrets
in the comments.
with Keira Knightley? It's quite recent. It's I watched it the other night, and it's all about Blair lying through his teeth about WMD in Iraq, and it's about this true story of a girl working at GCHQ and they get sent an intercept, piece of intel that's obviously top secret, but it's all about the fact that Blair's government lied about the intel they had on weapons of mass destruction, and she basically leaks it to the Observer newspaper, and they run it as a main story, which obviously causes a massive furore. And in the end, she was at home for 6 months, wondering whether or not she was going to be tried under the for breaking the Official Secrets Act. And Blair's lawyers and the government lawyers basically backed away from the case in the High Court. I think, the Old Bailey. Because they didn't want the negative press that would be generated as a result of they basically just let her walk because actually they didn't have a leg to stand on. She stood by her evidence and said you lied about the WMDs and all this of it, and they knew they really didn't have a strong enough argument to fight her, so they let her walk. Even though she had actually.
It's amazing how they put these things out in the open, like hidden in plain sight.
Well,
this is a film, like with Keira Knightley in it, and amongst others. But it's a very good film, actually. Watch it. It's called Official Secrets, and it's based on a true story about a girl working at GCHQ who basically fed a top secret document about WMD in Iraq, or the falsity of it, to the Observer newspaper. So it's one to add to your list of list to watch.
Well,
Let's have a look and see
Official Secrets Act punishments. I don't think a lot of people necessarily are aware about how extreme they are. If you get found guilty of a breach of the Official Secrets Act, you get sent to prison. You get put in solitary confinement if you're in prison. And further to that, the time period you get given, that is subject to approval for release. Once you have been arrested under the Official Secrets Act, even if you've not been charged with it, if you've just been arrested for it, the only person who can release you is the Home Secretary. The only person who can order your release is the Home Secretary. Obviously, I would assume that the Queen may be able to say something, but generally it's viewed that the only person who can allow your release from custody is the Home Secretary. Therefore, once you're arrested for it, because I remember when I was in the military, we were told, technically when people break onto a military base, they're guilty of breaching the Official Secrets Act. Do not arrest them for breach of the Official Secrets Act, because there is no way they will be released until such time as the Home Secretary gets round to deciding whether or not to release them.
Well, that's very interesting because this obviously led off. So they obviously thought, as a damage limitation, it was going to be better just to sort of let it go and bury the whole thing, rather than have it heavily publicised in the newspapers that with all her evidence to suggest that the government had been flagrantly lying. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, just how. But there you go, a mainstream film where they're slagging off Tony Blair and his administration to the nth degree, literally. I mean, it's they take no prisoners. It's all about him lying, and they have footage of the 2 million odd people that walked through the streets of London in protest against the wall in 2003. So,
what's the movie called again, Piers?
It's called Official Secrets. If you look it up, it's starring Keira Knightley, and I can't remember who else is in it, but there's some good actors in it, and it's good. It's a genuinely interesting film, and it's based on something that actually happened. So.
Right, I've saved it to the list. Thanks.
I want to
Nice
ask you guys what you think about Q and some of the things that's coming out of from Q, some of the revelations. Boosey, what have you got any thoughts? You don't trust Fulford so much, maybe, but what about Q?
Well, the information about Q was brought to my attention by others, so I gave it a look, and some of it at the time we're talking. This was about nearly 2 years ago. Seemed a bit far fetched to me at the time. So I made use of some of my contacts that I still have of people who are within the intelligence apparatus in both the UK and the US. And
What are you saying? What are you saying, Boosey? You say you're Russian connections. Is that what you said?
No. Because of what I used to work in Intel, so I
used to work. I used to work for AMD.
So yeah, but what I'm saying is I still have people that I can have a conversation with about certain things. Now, they're the same with obviously the classification issue. You can't talk about certain things because you breach the Official Secrets Act. But that doesn't mean you can't have conversations around the issue and maybe put theories to people and they kind of go, or I don't think you're right there. There's ways of passing information through veiled speech, even on that you're not going to be able to get done under the Official Secrets Act for. And I was passing information and saying, hang on, I'm hearing this. Is there any truth to this? And was able to discern that a lot of the stuff that was coming out, either people didn't know it or they were able to categorically confirm it. There was nothing I never got any that's not true. And that to me meant that I started going down the rabbit hole and went down and would look into things. The big thing about Q is it's written very much how someone in intelligence who has intelligence and the class clearances, it's written very much in a way that we would speak so as not to break any laws, so that we could talk to people about things that would get us in a lot of trouble without actually
without incriminating
crossing that line.
Yeah.
And the way they speak is commensurate with how these people having those clearances, the way the information I get from it, I've been able to independently verify through people through various different sources, and I've not ever seen anything that's Q's put out that has been proven to be false. The media will try and say, "Oh, this has been proven to be false. This has been proven to be false," but the amount of times that they say this has been proven to be false, but it's not. That's just their opinion. There's never actually any evidence to prove that it's a load of rubbish and it's just a conspiracy theory. They just say, no, don't believe this, and
yeah, but they're leaving a lot of stuff out. Is my point.
Yeah, but this is the thing. They can't just say.
Can't say 5G is harmful to your health.
This thing they can't say. If you look, the whole idea behind Q is that you need to think for yourself and open the doors to the knowledge for yourself. It's just giving you the breadcrumbs for you of showing you where to research. Now,
doesn't that sound like a coded?
And I'm also not convinced about 5G. Personally, I've worked with signals. That was my field in working intelligence. I know about signals. I know about how certain signals are dangerous. I am not fully convinced about 5G at this moment in time. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm not saying I do believe it, but I'm not convinced either way. But I can say that the Q stuff, I have no doubt whatsoever in my mind, based on checking things out using the sources, some sources that I have that anyone has, and some sources I have that, unless you've worked in those areas, you will not have. And that's the information. That's where I've got this verified information. And
let's see what
there have been too many
Q.
There have been too many Q proofs to call it a LARP, or to call it just a pure conspiracy theory with no basis.
I want to throw this round, to you guys. But first of all, let's see what other people have to say on this as well. Smile is MP's monthly credit card limits increased to £10,000 a month for working from home. Yeah, that's another thing again. A lot of Q followers, says David Laddie, are getting impatient now, saying when. Kenneth Noel Curran, say again, equals a bear, Aris, go, Rabib, mate, Agit. I can't understand that, Kenneth. Bless you, mate. Tanis Pullen, who is very concerned because there's not going to be any tennis. Wimbledon called off. Tennis on tennis. It also is talking to Kenneth in there or something or other. David Laddie is saying it's coded regarding Q. Carlos, Q is everywhere though. Asda, Morrison's, Tesco, Aldi. And 8 full point is our prison service looking after Assange. That's another thing as well we could talk about in a second. Sam JP, the Q drops seem to be structured so that Q followers will want to do their own research. Nothing I've seen seems to be untrue. Does Q know the 2-meter rule? Asks Carlos. Nothing else there on Q that I can see. So you tell me, maybe Jay first. What are your thoughts on Q? I think that you're more into Q now.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm more into him. I've researched him.
Yeah,
but I'd say he's more like a coded ring cult, to be honest. Something to keep people occupied. So what's he saying? He's saying, sit on your ass and just let us handle it. Don't worry about it. Trust in the plan.
So you think that Q is a distraction?
Well, yeah, it's like the Flat Earth Society. It's something that people get hooked on. And yeah, they use factual information to suck you in, but they're still missing a lot of stuff out. So people aren't leaving the Q crumbs. They're just following those crumbs. They're not following the other crumbs. The ones that aren't mentioned. So they're not learning the whole story.
Oh, Mary E just put a message up, which I was going to read out, and she's just retracted it. But so I'm not going to say what she wrote but there is some skepticism. Piers.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm not surprised that anybody that's done the research that the four of us have done over the last few years. I mean, let's face it, we've been talking about sort of mass arrests for nigh on 10 years. I've been flying out to Spain for the last 10 years, sitting on the beach with Ollie, going, it's going to happen anytime soon now. And then another year goes by and absolutely sod all happens. So
hopeless romantics, mate.
You what?
Hopeless romantics.
Yeah. But, we seem to be in a slightly different juncture. There's a lot of weird stuff happening right now. And Wilcock, a lot of people don't like David Wilcock and think he's a weirdo and an arrogant and misdirected and a con artist. I've met him and I had a very sort of weird synchronous event happen at his lecture. And I actually, strangely, even though he is a bit of a weirdo, I think that he's quite credible in a lot of ways, even though I think he is fed misinformation sometimes, and he has a tendency to be a little bit too naive and trusting of certain individuals. But he's clever, and I do believe a lot of what he preaches about the sort of physicality of reality and all the rest of it. sacred geometry and the nature of reality. He's a very interesting bloke, and he's been given these intel briefings to say that all this sort of collapse is where we're going to be switched off for 3 days while these operations occur. He seems absolutely convinced that it's imminent. He has sort of alluded to this in the past, and nothing's happened. And he has, when he made these suggestions the other day, he said, "Please don't kill me if it doesn't happen, but my intel, is saying that this is about to happen, and I'm very pumped and excited, and convinced that this is going to go down. Whether it does or not, well, remains to be seen. But I tell you what, if my phone stops working and my laptop stops working, I'm going to be very excited. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to be very excited, because that will be the first hardcore piece of evidence that seems to correlate with what these people are saying. And God knows what we will all wake up to on the flip side of 3 days of darkness, namely. Yeah, so it'll be... I am getting frustrated, and I think a lot of Q followers and people generally who are like us, who bother to do a bit of digging a bit deeper than the average person. We are getting frustrated. We seem to be fed damp squib after damp squib. Q seems to allude to certain things. Everybody builds up their hopes. We wait, and then nothing happens.
On the other hand, though, Piers, I mean, it's a little bit like Trump saying he's going to drain the swamp on his soapbox for the presidential election campaign, the last one. And you could argue, well, he hasn't done that much of it yet. But then also, you could argue conversely that he's had one hand tied behind his back. I mean, the first thing you would have to do if you're going to drain the swamp is clear a path that you get to.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a monumentally huge task, and you have to have some sort of contingency in place. Otherwise, you'll end up with anarchy. So yeah, I do appreciate the monumental scale of what we're talking about here. I mean, it does seem that most of the high levels of government, certainly in the States and Canada and Europe, all the heads of state in Europe, and it does seem that everything's been infiltrated by this globalist philosophy. And that there are going to have to be a huge number of very, very powerful and influential people taken out of office, and what do you replace them with? So it is. I am aware of just the monumental scale. Plus, you have to have if the financial system does go tits up, you've got to have something to replace it with. I mean, we have addressed this a little bit, but yeah, this is something on a global scale. This is a monumental thing. And they can't really just push the button because everybody's frustrated. They have to wait till they've got all their eggs lined up, or whatever the expression is. They've got to wait until they are truly ready before they can hit the go button. Otherwise, it could all catastrophically backfire on them, and not go the way they want. So, I mean, David Wilcox seems very optimistic about everything, and he's convinced that the majority of the military now are on the side of the alliance, and that. They're not the bad guys any longer. They've realised that they've been lied to, and they're now essentially working for the good guys. So I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I sincerely hope that we are on the moment of significant change. I think the world desperately needs significant change.
The capitalist like it's going to go one way. Farcical. It does look like it's going to go decidedly one way or the other.
Yeah, it does at the moment, but the likes of Wilcock are saying no. It's and Q, they all seem extremely Q's. If you choose to believe in what Q has to say, it always remains very upbeat and positive. Nothing could stop what's going to happen. Nothing. Yeah. Where we go one, we go all this sort of stuff. So. I mean, it remains entirely optimistic and sort of resolute that the good guys are essentially going to win. And Wilcock's the same. He believes that if we're looking at a sort of a battle between good and bad, light and dark, it definitely believes that the good guys have got the upper hand, and that it's just a question of time now. And he believes, that whatever is going to go down is imminent. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I'm quite vocal on things like Facebook about some of these, some of the intel that we get from sporadically, and I do get utterly lambasted for it by
I've seen
a lot of the people I'm friends with, just calling me a daft, see you next Tuesday, and do you really believe this shit, you stupid tit, and all this sort of stuff, So
it is true. It is true, Piers. Actually, this is fascinating. I want to explore this a bit because you have some friends who, understandably, like all of us in our different ways, are heavily conditioned. And morons. No, conditioned. Sorry, and that's understandable. This is an incredible time. Do you think that people are beginning to wake up a bit, or are they just completely? Oh, it's all fine. It's all fine. It doesn't matter where the virus came from and stuff like that.
No, I think people are genuinely very frightened by all of this, and
But are they not questioning? Are they not questioning the reasons and maybe a little bit more open-minded to some of the alternative theories, or are they blindly trusting the Daily Telegraph?
They have a very different mindset from us because a lot of them have kids and they have families and responsibilities. You don't have any children. I don't have any children. Realistically speaking, I'm only responsible for myself and my loved ones, and which doesn't involve children. So obviously, when you're a parent, your mindset is significantly different, and they. I mean, people are. This is a good litmus test. This whole corona business, because it does just show how much people rely on the intel they're getting from the mainstream media, and most, I'm afraid to say, are still very much on board with it. And are still utterly. People just aren't prepared to accept that there might be some dark force running the world from behind the curtain. They just cannot wrap their head around that. And I mean, I must admit, I'm not really looking for self-vindication, in terms of what I've preached online for the last few years. But it would be nice, wouldn't it? My God, I mean, it would be so nice to sort of have a little bit of vindication. It would be, I'm going to pamper my own ego a little bit now and say, God, wouldn't it be nice to have some of the people who have called me a complete see you next Tuesday to my face over and over again for the last few years, to get them to eat a bit of humble pie and force them to have to say, sorry, you were right, I was wrong. I'm right. Sort of salivating at the thought of that prospect a little bit, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but also it's just bigger than that. I got to say, one of the reasons I didn't have kids was because I looked at the kind of world that we were living in, and I thought, I'm really, really not sure that I want to bring children up in that kind of a world. And also, I was very keen on journalism, and I thought, you know what? I don't think you can really be honest and not become a Jobsworth if you've got assets which are going to be threatened. And that is what seems to happen with people from all aspects of life. And that's
probably why the majority of MPs don't have kids.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know that it works that way. I mean, in terms of MPs, I think very often they are they receive their positions or are parachuted into seats or whatever because they are easily manipulated, and so I'm not sure that it works that way. Marie E says, "Listen to yourselves. I can't believe such intelligent people are so gullible and have not done the proper research. It's not hard to find the info that Q is a fraud. It's hackers laughing at you all." Well, Marie, I don't know. If you've got the answers, please call in and tell us the evidence. But I really, really don't know. But I'm not going to just say somebody is a fraud when I don't have the evidence to say that they're a fraud. On the other hand,
that'd be too easy. You need to look into it a bit more. Both sides, you need both sides.
Can't say one way or the other. I really can't. I mean, this is it. We live in these deranged times where, we are sourcing information outside the mainstream, but we just don't know what to trust. I mean, there's so much fear mongering going on. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard that recording of the guy who's supposed to have worked at Vodafone. I mean, that was chilling.
The guy who exposes 5G.
He's saying that that actually there are various events when these pandemics have broken out over the last century. Starting with the Spanish flu back in 1918 or whatever, where they launched. It was the first time that everybody got on the electrical grid, and it had a knock-on effect with people's health. And he gave evidence to suggest that all pandemics are in conjunction with sort of when they've fried us electromagnetically, with the introduction of new technology, and that 5G is basically the same, and that COVID-19 is being used as a smokescreen to cover up the illness that accompanies the introduction of 5G, which they will not do without. They're going to introduce it anyway because they want to create a smart world where everything's interconnected, everything's run by AI, and they have complete control over our everyday lives.
That would make sense. That would make sense considering Wuhan was a 5G testbed, and it was switched on in November 2019, and then the virus suddenly appeared a month later.
Yes, and actually the death rates in Italy and Spain have been high because they are, they've launched 5G over there in large portions of the country as well. That footage we saw of Wuhan where the officials were sort of dragging people away, kicking and screaming, doesn't seem to be telling of COVID-19. It seems to indicate some sort of manic hysteria, within the individuals that they're handling. And what's really, if this thing is affecting our biorhythms and our electromagnetic, the body is essentially an electromagnetic organism. Our nervous system is, and the neurons in our brain, they're all essentially electromagnetic, firing and sending messages and producing chemicals, So, when you're living in an electromagnetic soup that's 10 times more potent and powerful than 4G, one might think that certain people might be slightly more susceptible to it, than others, and that it might drive the odd person crazy, and that seems to be indicated in the footage that you saw from Wuhan, where they're literally kind of dragging these writhing people away,
and some people are just dropping down dead, like a lack of oxygen to the bloodstream or something. Not you don't drop dead from a flu, do you?
Exactly. He seems to be saying that they knew that a certain contingent of the population would be highly susceptible to this, but the majority would be strong enough to bear it and then adapt over time. Then they're not going to hold back on 5G because that is their plan for the global takeover. The introduction of their sort of new world order. So I do think we are on the precipice of two conflicting ideologies, that are fighting for dominance. And all I can hope, through hope of hopes, is that the alliances, the guys fighting the deep state are significant enough in order to see that through.
According to Fulford, there's two factions into this: the Khazarian Mafia, which consists of the Clintons and the Bushes, and then there's the White Dragon Society, which consists of the Chinese and the Russians.
Yeah, that's right. There does seem to be a lot of off-book imperial Chinese gold that may be reintroduced into the financial system once the deep state financial system is finally taken down. Obviously, we've all seen that the Federal Reserve has been merged with the Treasury now, so that seems to have been some form of nationalisation of the Fed.
Yeah, we've been told that, but we haven't actually seen any evidence to suggest it, have we?
That's true. That is
and
true.
Bush did that as well.
Yeah, that seems to be what Kennedy was assassinated for, because he was trying to sort of end the dominance of the Federal Reserve. I don't know. I don't know.
He said that a couple of weeks before he was assassinated, didn't he? That
long speech about secret societies.
Jay Carey, do me a favour. Unplug your mic and plug it back in, because your audio is dreadful, sir. It's really, really bad.
Sorry, I'm on a Bluetooth. I was away from my computer then.
All right. No, let me just take a few comments here. Mark Conway says 5G is carrier aggregation. This means you will not just be using one connection. You may use 3 or 4 or more. Amanda Rolfson says they are controlling what we can see or find on the web. Now, that is the trouble. Need to visit the archives. Phantom Prophet, couldn't the 3 days of darkness be a ruse to provide cover and prevent people from communicating as they go rounding up all the troublemakers and conspiracy researchers. And conversely, Phantom Prophet, as I understand it, it could be a way to stop people communicating with each other whilst those sealed indictments are enacted. They're supposed to.
Or it could be a way to implement the quantum financial system that they're talking about.
Yes, I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to pull that caper off in 3 days. I mean, I think if anything, it's I mean, they've got all those American troops in Europe at the moment, sort of 20,000-30,000 of them at the moment, and Wilcox seemed to be alluding to the fact that that this is they've brought over a whole load of serious kit with them, and that he believes that while we're all in the dark, they will be literally going into these installations where these people are and taking them out.
To me, it seems like they're trying to introduce decentralization, but doing it under a fake decentralized system. Like Bitcoin, they always tout Bitcoin as a decentralized anonymous system, and it is, because it's not controlled by the banks, but they're trying to introduce something similar to Bitcoin and say it's decentralized. So people think
we will go. But do we really know if Bitcoin is actually truly?
Do we know? Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, that was brought in by the Chinese on it. Satoshi Nakamoto, is that his name? Satoshi Nakamoto.
Japanese bloke. But we don't know for sure who brought in Bitcoin anyway. So Chris,
nobody knows. We've got people coming up saying I'm Bitcoin man and then stealing Bitcoin. So, and insider trading, who actually bought they bought the website, didn't they, Bitcoin.com, and pretended that Bitcoin Cash was the real Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I've got about 100 quid's worth of Bitcoin that I bought just for the bloody hell of it, just to sort of have, there just to see if anything happens with it. But I don't have any faith.
You should have bought some loo paper. Right. So, Sam JP, for those who are impatient, can you imagine what Trump has to unpick? This goes back decades, and there are hundreds of thousands. Jamie Mitchell says, see Trump mocking the 1,000 points of light speech by Bush. What was the 1,000 points of light speech by, what is that? Is that Bush Senior or Junior? Anybody know?
That's supposed to be reference to that mansion place, where they bring kids in. Where is it now?
Not Bohemian Grove.
It's in France somewhere. I can't remember. The place of 1,000 lights, the room of 1,000 lights, to call it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's apparently where they practice sacrificial gatherings, and Hillary Clinton's a big part of it. So to see the face, that was, he said that, and they shook, kind of as if they knew what he was talking about. But most people didn't know what 1,000 lights meant.
They're a lovely lot, aren't they?
Still, it keeps us occupied, doesn't it? I mean, we haven't got a life this way, but once it's all over, what are we going to do? We're not going to be able to talk about this.
I mean, how many paedophile scandals do there have to be? How many powerful and influential people have to be arrested? And I mean, we all know that Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein were very powerful and very well-connected individuals. Where the hell is
Cardinal Pell?
Ghislaine Maxwell, what's happened to her? Who's protecting Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah.
The assumption is that she's in Israel. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine were working for Mossad. And that, that article appeared in the paper where Catherine Oxenberg's sister, so the actress Catherine Oxenberg has a sister who was friends with Ghislaine. And the papers picked it up, and it was an article about her claiming that Ghislaine had told her that Jeffrey and her had footage of all these VIPs.
That's right.
In flagrante delicto with little boys and little girls and whatever they want, and
isn't it amazing that we've got such a huge surveillance system yet we can't find one good woman?
Yes, I know, isn't it? It's just ridiculous, so it does seem, and we've got all the, the fact that the child sex abuse inquiry was launched. I mean, they did turn that into one big giant damp squib.
They didn't even interview the people who were testifying against it.
Well, they asked people to submit their testimony, and then they lost it all.
Convenient.
Yeah, right. It was set up to fail from the start.
Yep.
I mean, Ollie and I have alluded to Tim Fortescue's quote over and over again on this show many times before. But his words were so telling. I mean, the fact that he basically admitted that they blackmailed paedophiles. They'd help them
MPs.
get off the
MPs,
and then
child rapists, MPs, blackmailed by the whips to do the bidding of the government. That was the government that took the UK into the EEC, which subsequently became the EU. And Tim Fortescue's whip colleague was Ken Clarke. Ken Clarke, who has been on Question Time on the BBC more than any other politician, telling us what to think, what to do, telling us how you plebs, you shouldn't have democracy. We should decide everything centrally. I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it? It's incredible.
I can't remember the name.
There's too many people in the world. What about Tony Blair and is it Gordon Brown as well? All pushing for one world government to solve the corona crisis.
Yeah.
That's
Gordon
fairly
Brown's
telling,
on that
isn't
case
it?
now.
Australia's doing it as well.
Gordon Brown, who told every police, I'm harping on about this quite a lot at the moment, but I mean, this is the kind of thing the IICSA, the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, which I think that one of you guys, I think Kenneth Noel Curran was asking about in the comments, what's going on with that now? Well, nothing, because everything's suspended, isn't it? Everything is suspended. But even if there was something going on with it, it only deals with historical crimes where they're all dead. Apart from Lord Steele, who knew and basically was complicit in the crimes of Cyril Smith, and he was the leader of the Liberal Party, the Lib Dems, the SDP, whatever. Lord Steele, David Steele, and why is he not being investigated by the police for having allowed this guy Cyril Smith to have, God knows how many children he raped over the course of decades, because of the silence of David Steele. Now, David Steele admitted that to the IICSA, but otherwise, the IICSA is doing nothing useful. Nothing useful. All the people that they're investigating are dead. The people that they should be... My rant's very nearly over, Piers. The people that they should be investigating are people like Gordon Brown and Jackie Smith, the Prime Minister, leader of the Labour Party, Prime Minister before Cameron or whatever, and his Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, who sent an edict to every police constabulary in the UK telling them to ignore the mass rape, torture, murder gangs. They told them to ignore them. They told the police to ignore them. How more criminal can you be than that? And this is the guy, Gordon Brown, who's now trying to use coronavirus as an excuse to bring in a one world government. I'll tell you.
Actually, do you remember Greville Janner? The Greville Janner case. I mean, the evidence against him was passed to the Department of Public Prosecutions, and I spoke to a barrister friend of mine about the Greville Janner case, and he has extensive knowledge in the criminal field, and I said, how is it that with all this overwhelming evidence against Greville Janner, they did nothing while he was still alive, because he was claiming to have Alzheimer's, and yet he was still turning up at the House of Lords, getting his daily paycheck, and voting on various issues. How is it that they waited till he died and then they basically buried the whole thing? I mean, his son is a barrister as well, who's trying to fight, or was trying to fight his father's good name, in inverted commas. But the criminal prosecution service had overwhelmed that he'd abused multiple children, and it was all buried.
Well, I mean, this is all allegedly, isn't it? Because it's all been overthrown, whether it's true or not. But we do know it's all been overthrown by. One thing we do know about Janner is that the guy was he had Alzheimer's or something, and yet he was still in the Lords voting for years whilst he was incapable.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to have to go. Unfortunately, I've got a few chores to run. But
Piers,
I hope
God
you don't
bless you,
mind
mate.
if I gracefully duck out.
God bless you,
And
Piers.
we've not let Chris speak for a while now, so
Yeah,
No,
I'll
that's
leave
right.
you guys to it if that's okay. I wish you all the best, and let's all chat again soon. Ollie, I hope
Lots
you
of
don't
love
mind if
to
I
you, Piers.
if I
No,
bail out.
lots of love to you, man. You take care.
All the best to you, all four of you. Take care. Cheerio.
take care, Piers.
Bye.
Let's go on. Now, Jamie Mitchell says 1,000 points of light means the 1,000 ways they are subverting the world. Kenneth Noel Curran says Jack Straw is another anti-Christian with blood in his hands. Children abused, exploited and forcibly adopted UK and elsewhere. Jack Straw
Always reminded me of the demon headmaster.
Yeah, and well, he always reminded me of a Nazi officer. But also, Jack Straw, wasn't he Foreign Secretary during the Iraq War? Another war criminal, in other words.
It was surrounded by him. It's crazy. Then they just got Podesta to work for the Queen. Podesta's, I saw some news about that. But anyway, what was I going to say? China, yeah? China, a friend or foe, Chris? What I think, friend or foe?
Well, they're definitely a foe.
Right, because what I'm hearing is those test kits that are coming into New York are funded by the Belinda Gates, is it the Bill and Belinda Gates Foundation?
Well, this is what I was saying earlier on. The ones that were going to the UK, have been infected with COVID-19.
And the ones from the UK are coming
the ones that are bound for the UK are the test kits are infected with COVID-19.
But they're coming from where? Where are they coming from?
China.
So they're not in Melinda Gates Foundation.
Well, no. This is the thing. It's where do you think the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation ones are coming from? It's.
Well, yeah.
This is a problem. You've got, and when we start talking about obviously America and where certain equipment's coming from, everyone seems to continue to think about America as being one entity, and don't seem to realize how much power these individual governors have. Effectively, these governors are presidents of their own states.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, because of the 10th Amendment, which gives power to the states for anything which is not declared to be federal. So anything that's been put in the box that this is a federal power and is explicitly a federal power, they can't really do much about without the consent of the president. If it's not in that box of being solely a presidential power, solely a federal power, there's then dispute as to who's allowed to do what. And we know already with the states of New York and California, which are Democrat controlled, and well, when you consider you've got Governor of New York, Cuomo. Oh, his brother works for CNN. Governor of California, Newsom. Oh, his aunt's the Speaker of the House. They have a lot of power, and a lot of the criticisms that they're levying against the federal government for not doing X, Y, and Z. A lot of those things that they're criticizing for are actually reserved states' powers, and they're things where the states are supposed to make sure they've got enough ventilators in times of emergency. They're supposed to make sure there's face masks. They're supposed to make sure, and they're supposed to keep a stock. But they've got rid of their stocks, and then they're blaming the federal government for not replacing these supplies. And then you've got the news saying that the federal government is not supplying ventilators and face masks to New York, and then it's been uncovered that they were supplied and they were being kept in a warehouse, and the governor of New York and all of these and the state authorities were not distributing them and using them. So it's like, but they're saying, oh no, we never had, and at the same point telling the media they've never got them. So they're just hiding them. Much like in Haiti, they found out that all the relief stuff that Trump sent to Haiti they found it all in warehouses that hadn't been touched.
Didn't the FBI
Because
threaten them?
because Haiti is run by the Clinton family.
Yeah.
The Rodhams, the Rodhams basically own Haiti.
Just a very brief interjection, Chris. I remember Trump was at a press conference, and there was a former premier from Haiti at that press conference who said to him and asked him what his knowledge was about the Clintons having taken all that money from the Haiti Disaster Fund from about 10 years ago now, 2008 or something like that, taken all that money, and it never got to Haiti. And this was a former Haiti, I don't know whether he was prime minister or president, but he was a former premier of Haiti, and asking that question to Donald Trump about the Clintons. And again, where's the coverage in the media? I mean, it's just a massive story.
Like the fact that we had thousands of children go missing in the Haiti disaster, and they say, "Oh no, they got lost in a disaster."
Yeah.
But then they have planes taking off from Haiti going to Little St. James, which is a known pedophile playground.
Epstein's Island.
Yeah, Epstein's Island. It's a known paedophile playground and child sacrifice site, and they've got flights during a disaster flying out of Haiti to Little St. James, children disappearing, and they're just saying, "Oh no, nothing to see here." I'm sorry, you only need an IQ of 100 to work out what's going on there. It doesn't take much logic.
It's amazing, isn't it? We've never heard anything about the investigation on that island. It all seems to have been covered up. There's that temple, that blue and white striped temple, for example.
There is one thing that's when we look at the Horowitz report, and there was something very, very small that they were never talking about. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's there, and it says in black and white, the Clinton Foundation is involved in crimes against children. There, it's like bang.
It said this in the Horowitz report.
Horowitz IG report.
Tell me more about that report. Who compiled that?
They did. You initially had the Mueller report.
Yes.
Then you had the Horowitz report. Okay, right. and these are looking into, things with like
electoral
the deep state and what they're doing within America. But the thing is, the Horowitz report was an IG report.
Notice, what's an IG? What's IG?
Inspector General. So it has no prosecutory powers. So General Horowitz had he had no prosecutory powers. So he can investigate stuff as much as he likes, but he had no subpoena power and he had no prosecutory power, which means the only information they can get is stuff that they can find that's written down, that they don't have to get subpoenas for. The only information they get from people is information that's freely given because they cannot subpoena people to give information. So what was happening after that, based on the information found in the IG report, where the media went, "See, they've shown us nothing been done wrong, nothing been done wrong," because it says no, this was fine. It was procedural errors. The Horowitz report has not recommended prosecutions. He's not recommended that people be subpoenaed when he didn't have the power to do so. And now you've got the Durham report is being worked on, but Durham has both subpoena and prosecutory powers. So he can't. So that's digging further into it, where the IG report the Mueller report was just a bust. The Mueller report was the deep state's attempt to try and find dirt on Donald Trump. Then the IG report was the counter report trying to find dirt on the deep state within America. That then found some smoking guns, which then led to the Durham investigation, which is ongoing, which will actually lead to will have the ability to lead to prosecutions, and there's a big difference there. But the IG report stated categorically that the Clinton Foundation was involved in crimes against children. The Clintons have tried to wind up the Clinton Foundation. Now, there was a little bit about that in the media, but then it was not talked about again. But basically, the Clintons tried to wind up the Clinton Foundation, and they got informed by the IRS that they were not allowed to wind it up. And because the IRS are investigating the Clinton Foundation, and if you're a business and they believe that you've done something, there's some financial issues there, where effectively, in this regard, we're talking taxes. Mm-hmm. If they think you've been fiddling your taxes, you can't close your business if you're under investigation. Your business has to be kept running. Mm-hmm. So the Clinton Foundation hasn't been wound up purely because it's under investigation, because they did try to wind it up. Now, what I can see as being the main way that what I can see is going to be the main cover for dealing with some people is that they're going to use RICO, the racketeering.
What's RICO?
Yeah, the racket, which is about racketeering. Mm-hmm. Because RICO crimes, it's similar to like getting the mafia for tax evasion. You can't necessarily prove that the mafia has done X, Y, and Z because you can't get the sources, you can't get this, that, and the other, but you can prove that they've earned X amount of money and they've not paid enough tax. So you do deal with the mafia bosses for tax evasion. RICO can be used is a similar thing, and it was actually created by a lot of the RICO stuff actually comes from Giuliani. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of this international activity, while they might be able to prove through intelligence, you can't always use intelligence material in a court of law. But what you can do is a lot of what they're doing. Racketeering is an additional. Now they might not want to, and as Q says, if 100% of the information was of what some of these people were doing was released, it would not be beneficial to the psyche of the masses, because you will have mass, any mass suicides we get for this coronavirus stuff is going to be small scale in comparison to what would be there. You're going to have people killing themselves. You're going to have riots. You're going to have a complete blow up of everything. So what it looks like is some of the more minor disgusting crimes that they deem to be disgusting, bad enough that people are going to be shocked by it. Those people will be outed. When we start getting to the really, really vile stuff, we will have people arrested and imprisoned for RICO offences, which will get them incarcerated. And then suddenly you'll hear no more about these people, because they will then, while incarcerated, have the other crimes tried and prosecuted and executions.
Okay, Chris, I've got a couple of questions. Before we move on from there. I reckon we've got another 8 minutes or so on this show, folks.
Yeah.
First of all, Horowitz, that report, was that not an investigation into Pizzagate? Into the Pfizer?
Yeah, that was an investigation into Pfizergate, Spygate.
Right. And so did that not, for example, because, excuse me, I guess I've been distracted or what have you, but there's been so little coverage. Compare it to the Mueller report, which found nothing. All the
the Mueller report was going after Trump.
With this Horowitz report, I haven't read much about it, to be honest with you. Did they not come up? Did that report not come up with some allegations about tampering into the Trump presidential election campaign from the White House, Obama's White House?
Yes, exactly. It basically, the Horowitz report found that there were they couldn't find anyone criminally culpable, but what it effectively was an extremely expensive fact-finding mission. Facts that we already knew, but it's more a case of facts to put it into the public domain, which is why the media doesn't talk about it. But yes, it did find that there was presidential direction in relation to Spygate, which means that Obama was kept abreast and was directing the investigation.
So basically,
which means he weaponized the intelligence agencies against his political opponents.
So what about James Comey, who was head of the CIA? Oh, no, sorry, FBI. Was he somehow implicated in that? Because there were...
Yeah, basically, what they've effectively implicated, because they found that the 302s, which is the sworn statements, the sworn records, based on... So I interview you. If I'm in the FBI, I interview you. I record everything on a 302.
It's an affidavit.
Basically, yeah. It's an affidavit from the investigator based on my findings, based on my interview with you.
What about...
But it's quoted. It's meant to be verbatim.
So,
They found that they had been amended after the fact.
Oh, really?
Yes. Which
by who?
Which
you're talking
by the investigators. So, like Lieutenant General Mike Flynn's 302s were amended after the fact.
He's in prison now, isn't he, Flynn?
Yeah, basically, he's now got some decent legal counsel that is going to which is hanging, and Sidney Powell is really going for them because she's found they tried to say that these tampering of the 302s was a procedural error and not a criminal matter. But what we're talking about is you are changing a sworn statement of a witness to say something that you wanted to say rather than what they actually said.
Chris,
you're tampering with evidence.
That's
not a procedural error.
What about the British government? Were there any?
Yes, in foreign governments, including Britain, Canada, basically France. The Five Eyes community, apart from America, were used to spy on the Trump campaign, and were tasked to do this as a way that they could get it out of America, have it done outside of America. So there was the deniability factor that they were actually that that a Democrat president was spying on the Republican candidate. As has been said, Spygate, as it is, where we've gone on from Pfizergate, this is even bigger, it's now Spygate. Spygate makes Watergate look like a third-rate robbery. This is how serious it is. There was a full-blown.
So Chris, let me get this right. Yeah, we've had the Horowitz report, which couldn't actually prosecute anybody, but now
Yes.
from that
We've got
that
the
has
Durham.
led-
We've got the Durham investigation, which can prosecute, can subpoena people, so they can say, "You will provide this evidence to me by this date, or you will submit yourself for questioning." Whereas Horowitz couldn't.
This show just got
Which is,
interesting.
but they need. There's stages. Okay, if they had just gone for the Durham stage, they would say that Trump was weaponizing the intelligence agencies and weaponizing investigation to go after his political opponents. He has now got the cover that the Horowitz report was investigation into. Can we see on the surface, without using all of the subpoenas and forcing people's hands, can we find even an iota of evidence that there is actually basis for an investigation to go on in the first place? That found the basis. Now the Durham report allows it to become a criminal investigation.
So when are we going to see progress? When are we going to see the Durham investigation turn into some kind of draining of the swamp, or are we?
Well, this is the thing. We've got this current situation going on, and no one's talking about anything else at the moment. But what I've been informed about is that that the Durham investigation is still ongoing. It's not stopped. So they are still. This investigation is still ongoing, and we are having people. We are seeing even the biggest thing that Trump has actually done is judge appointments. He has made more judge appointments.
Yes,
than
that's right.
Any other
but
president in living memory.
Yes.
And why is that? Because how are you going to get prosecutions if you have a corrupt judiciary? You're not.
That comes back to this whole. You could argue this whole problem that Trump's had before he can drain the swamp. He has to clear the path, and you could argue that that's what he's been busy trying to do.
This is the thing. The swamp, as a lot of people saying, "Oh, why trust the platform?" People saying, "Oh, it's a placate." The Q stuff is trying to placate the masses and all this, and you just got to wait. You got to trust the plan. But the thing is, what a lot of people don't realize is just how deep this goes. If you haven't got a fair judiciary, how can you try people? So you've got to sort out you've got to got them. You've got to make sure your prosecution teams, i.e., your intelligence and law enforcement agencies, military, all these kind of elements, they need to be clean. So you have to go through the process. So before you even start going after these guys, you've got to get everything else before them fixed, so that when you go after them, it's just not thrown out of court, or evidence doesn't get lost, or all this chicanery that would happen. And
well, fantastic. Look, one other thing I want to ask you your opinion on, because I want to think the best of Donald Trump, but then I see Rudy Giuliani hanging around, and I remember 9/11, And I just find it inconceivable that Rudy Giuliani wasn't involved in the cover-up of 9/11. What does that tell us?
Well, from what I'm, from what my understanding is, there are very few people who are, let's be blunt, whiter than white in everything that's been going on. Because if you've had power at any point, they've got to have something on you, or else they won't let you. Now, I would say that the investigations that they've had into Trump, where they found the square root of FA, means that the guy we got at the helm, while he's brash and he's he's no saint.
Mm-hmm.
If they found anything that they found that they can't have found anything serious enough, because they would have toppled him. So if they can't topple him while he's trying to do this, he's there. Now, I believe that what's generally happened is we've got some people who are repentant of their behavior, people who kind of acted in such a way because, to be blunt, they didn't really have much choice in the matter anyway. If the swamp is that deep, how are you as a lame person going to stand up when there's no one there trying to take it out in the first place? You've got no top cover. So and it's like when you if you look back to World War II, there were people who were in the who were within the Nazi regime, who didn't always do what the command told them, and showed a bit of clemency and helped a few people by doing a few things under the table, but it was always minor. Why? Because there was no one protecting them, and they're putting themselves at grave risk. Now, I think in reality, there are a lot of people who were involved in stuff, not to the level that some people were, but they were involved in stuff. And rather than just sit back and stay on the bad team, they've come to the good team and said, yeah, I did this. I'm not proud of myself. I want out. Help me. Yeah, I want to help you. I want to change sides. And that's the thing. And when you do look at the Q communications, they do actually say quite clearly that there is no one is completely clean, but there are people that have come forward of their own free will and swapped sides and are working and are helping out. But as they say, there won't be deals, there won't be clemency for those people who haven't come forward themselves. So it's kind of, you need your, if you think about it on an eschatological thing.
Blimey, what does that mean?
We are, as in on a spiritual, religious side.
Right.
If you look at it that way, we have free will. Now, if you, by your own free will, repent of your sins, you're welcomed back with open arms. If you're found out and you say, yeah, I'm really, really sorry, I didn't mean to, but you're not actually truly sorry, you're just sorry you got caught, you're not going to be welcomed back with open arms, and you're going to have to atone for your sins.
Didn't he say to get a Rommel death?
Yes. Basically, yeah. So there will be some people who, I think this coronavirus, there will be some people who, very high profile people, who have given evidence at the 11th hour, as in they know it's too late for them to
Repent.
to go back to the way things were. They've done too much, but they've given evidence and shocked other people. This would be like your Weinsteins, potentially. People like that may have squawked, and if they have, then they may be allowed. You need to die for your sin. You need to atone for your sins, and you've done something so heinous that you need to pay with your life. But for optics, we'll allow you to succumb to the coronavirus and die, and that will be the official story. Whether the fact that you've probably been given a lethal injection.
You mean avoid bringing it up in the cut, making them changing the.
So in effect,
core.
historically, when people read. When people will be told that these people have just succumbed to an illness or died of old age, had a heart attack, something like that, rather than those people then being put through the courts. The people that even at the 11th hour are not going to shop anyone, but they've got the evidence. Those people are going to be, they're the ones that are going to be paraded that they've done this, they've done that, they've done the other.
You know what? You give me hope, Boosey. I appreciate that. I really, really do appreciate your pragmatic approach and thoughts on this and cold hard facts about what's going on as well. I really do, mate. And you, Jay Carey, God bless you, man. God bless you too, sir. Thank you.
I just have a little announcement. I'm wearing this
God,
t-shirt.
you're not pregnant. Pregnant?
No. This is my Turning Point USA t-shirt. Just a little announcement. Effective yesterday, I am now. I've now been
thrown out of California.
Invited to be the chapter president, not just for my college campus, but for the entire community college district, to be in charge of the whole pushing civil liberties on campus for the entire community college district that covers basically the greater San Diego area. So
hold on, what does that mean? What does that mean?
So basically what that means is I'm going to be the effectively figurehead challenging a community college district that is a social justice community college district, and its infractions against people's civil liberties, and putting forward to the students how we need to protect our civil liberties. We don't need to be having to go to a particular section of the campus to be able to have free speech. Free speech should be everywhere on campus. We should be able to stand up to the socialist indoctrination of some of the lecturers.
Go on. I bet you scared some of them.
And apparently that having this role actually is due to what I did in the UK and conversations had at CPAC between the regional rep and one Nigel Farage, who questioned why I wasn't actually in a leadership role.
Really? Farage?
Yeah.
You know, it's just worth making a quick mention, something that Farage said this week, which I think is massively pertinent. Whilst the EU may implode now, possibly, with what's going on with Italy and elsewhere, and the EU just doesn't seem to give a stuff, just fining Italy for trying to help its people and stuff. And with what's going on the Turkey-Greek border, which is basically Turkey declaring war on Greece and Europe, and the EU doing bugger all about it, as is the case with the UN and NATO, by the way. But Farage said the EU could implode, but a caveat, because people like Italy are now getting some help from China, and the worry is that China is allowed to somehow fill the void. Now, I don't want to go off on too long on this, literally just a minute or so, gentlemen, but Farage has got a very, very good point there, huh? It's all very well seeing the EU blow up, die, God knows what, hopefully do it. But not if it's replaced by China.
No, it's like out of the pan and into the fire. Basically, the biggest problem that has faced countries like Greece and Italy is they're told they must stay in the EU, and that the EU are their friends, and all these EU nations have come to, and no one's helped them out. Now, that means that rogue nations like China are going, and Russia are going to, though I think Russia's kind of coming out from the cold a bit, but China is going to take advantage of that. What we need to realize is, while we do not support a one continent government, or whatever they want to call it, for the EU, we don't want that. That doesn't mean that our friendships, and we shouldn't be helping each other on a bilateral basis, country to country. Yes, we're all having problems, but we should realize that these countries, if we don't help our allies, our enemies will to turn our allies into enemies, and that's an important thing that we need to learn. So long we've just expected, countries to work on as part of a group, the UN, NATO, the EU. We actually need to take responsibility and say, we as countries have our allies, and we as countries need to help those allies, whether we have these international agreement bodies that we have, whether they say we're going to do it or not, we need to take responsibility and say, you're our friend, we're going to help you. And if, say, I'm an EU country and the EU says, no, we're not going to help them, we just need to basically stick two fingers up and say, no, we're going to help them. And just ignore these international... It's like the whole thing. Did we wait? In World War II, we had countries we were allied with.
Chris,
did we wait for an international agreement that we are going to attack? We're going to wage war with another country in defense of an ally that's been invaded? No.
It's incredible, isn't it?
When and did
Unbelievable. Unbelievable what's going on.
And that's what we need to do. We need to actually remember that we are an entity in of ourselves, and we can act unilaterally if we so wish. And we need to, and that's what all China's done. So we need to just make sure that old friendships aren't thrown in the bin, just because we're suffering. Suffering, and
that's right.
The reality is, with everything that's come out with this virus and other viruses in the past, and their behavior, and then providing substandard steel to America for it to build its warships with, which was approved by Obama. These kind of things. China
Chris?
is not the ally of anyone.
Mate.
So we
I'm
need
gonna-
to
I'm gonna have an
basically treat
accident.
China as an enemy. The world, individual
He's right,
countries
he's right.
across
He's
the world
right.
need to treat them as an enemy and go, you know what, China, you're an asshole. You've always been an
I love
asshole,
you, Boosey.
and we're
I
not
love
going
you,
to deal
Boosey.
with you anymore.
I love you, mate. I love you. I need a pee so bad. I need a pee. Jay!
Yeah,
Carey!
I'm still here, Ollie.
What have we learned? You've got 10 seconds. What have we learned?
Trust no one.
I trust you guys. Okay, God bless you. Do. I want to say a big cheers to my wonderful co-host, guest, chaps, friends, social club, whatever. To Garnham, yeah? Piers Garnham. God bless him for coming on and telling us all about, I don't know. He didn't talk about aliens tonight. Normally talks about aliens, doesn't he?
Gave us a movie to watch.
Hey, oh yeah. Official Secrets. Yes.
One. Look at that.
With that, what's her name?
Another one you should watch is Rick Mayall's Made Before
Rick
He
Mayall.
Died.
Oh,
One
he
by
was
one.
awesome. Yeah. Oh, blimey. What was it? Bastard MP. What was
No,
that?
I mean the one he died 4 months after making it. It's called One by One. It's all about the climate change and
Oh, really? Rick
martial law.
Mayall was awesome. I wonder what happened to him. I don't know. No, what was that? What was that comedy thing that he did? Playing the MP. Hey?
Bottom.
No, not Bottom. It was another one.
Young
he
Ones.
did that. I can't remember.
He's in the young ones as well.
Chris Boosey. God bless you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Wonderful information on Horowitz and Durham. Fantastic. And Jay Carey, God bless you, sir. Thank you, Jay. Thank you. And thank you so much for putting me in touch with Mark Windows as well. Looking forward to that on Friday. Tomorrow,
Yeah,
David H.
that'll be
Timms popping in. We're going to talk about whiskey. We're going to talk about whatever.
not Rodders?
Whatever.
But Rodders. Would be on that.
Rodders, bless you. Viscount, for crying out loud, get well, mate. Get well. Thank you, everybody in the comments. Alan Bastard. Yes. What was the name of the show, though? What was the name of the show? That Alan Bastard
What, the New
show?
Statesman?
Yes, the news. No, was it the New Statesman? Yeah, I think it could have been.
What about
the New
MPs?
Statesman.
About he was a Tory one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was a Tory tough. He was very good in that. He was brilliant, was Rick Mayall. I need a pee. You've been checking out Daily Chaos. I'm Olly Connelly, and thanks for turning up. And I'll see you tomorrow, 5 o'clock GMT. That's 6 o'clock CET. That's midday in DC. Mr. President, come on in and tell us what you're doing. Gonna lock her up.
Here's to us.
0900 PST.
And here's to us and bugger the NWO.
That's right. Bugger plutocracy.